do the introductions on your side very well. Over to you, Dr. Thaba.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phago and Pastor Phumzile. Just to confirm, you can hear me clearly. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to be part of this seminar, the career seminar. And I appreciate God for what he's doing through you and the value you add through these series of insightful, impactful, and educational seminars. And it's only a privilege and a pleasure for me to join in. So thank you for having me, and I look forward to what it will be. I always say to people when they ask me to speak for 20 minutes, and I say, even pastors can't close in 20 minutes. So I'll figure it out. It's one close, that's it. You're done. All right. So no, I appreciate this. And it's just going to be a conversation that I will have from a career standpoint and what has been, what has not been around my career. And so hopefully some of the stories as pertains to my career will come out in the process. But I am an actuary by profession through the Actuarial Society of South Africa. I grew up in Limpopo province in a rural area called Mamaolo. And my journey started there, meandered in many ways. I was in Cape Town at some point in time through my studies, and then ended up here in Johannesburg. And I've been in Johannesburg since 2016. And I've worked in different roles in different organizations. I've worked for a multinational organization, very large organization. I've worked for a small to medium-sized company where, you know, all the staff complement of this company that I worked for wasn't even one floor of one location of the previous company that I would have worked at, which was a multinational. I also worked for a professional services firm with over 100,000 employees across the globe. So I have had the privilege and the opportunity to be in different settings and consider the issues, the challenges, the opportunities that exist in a variety of settings as far as career is concerned. And I'm hoping that maybe one or two things that I would speak to might enlighten you. For some of you, it will be one thing. For some of you, it will be two things. Whatever it is, I hope that there will be some impact. That's 2 minutes of my time. Let's use the remaining 18 minutes a lot more impactfully. So I thought, because it's a career seminar, let me try and approach it from two perspectives, so to speak. So more general pointers and points as far as career growth, career management, and, you know, advancing our careers is concerned, which apply a lot more from when we enter the workforce in junior roles and as we grow into middle management. So that phase, there's a lot of common traits, common issues that are in consideration. And, you know, obviously I did indicate that I'm an actuary, but as far as principles of career advancement and career growth are concerned, they cut across. And I tried to focus on aspects that are going to most likely be potentially impactful for most of you. So as far as, you know, in the early days of your career is concerned to, you know, up to middle management, there's 3 pointers that I'll speak to. Then we'll speak to considerations around things that involve top management or executive roles. And then lastly, we'll close off with just a focus on general considerations. So there's 3 main areas that I'll speak to: early stages of your career to the middle stages. I wouldn't call it middle stages, but more to middle management. That's the first area. The second area will be a focus on, you know, considerations for top management, executive leadership type roles. The third area will just be around what I would call overarching considerations. So let's jump into that first area. I was thinking about this and I was reflecting a lot on my career and the early stages of my career and where my mind was. Some things may not have worked as well, some things have worked as well. But I realized and considered what really helped. And there are 3 points that I want you to, you know, note as far as what I'll speak to is concerned. Number 1, it is important for you to possess a drive for excellence and an insatiable desire to win. That's number 1. Number 2, it is important for you to focus on learning how to solve problems. this is one of those points where, as a person who likes packaging points in a succinct, punchy manner, I was looking at this point, I'm like, maybe I should leave it out. No, it doesn't sound punchy in itself, but it's quite profound and it's quite impactful. So I decided to include it here, and I'm going to unpack it just now. And number 3, it is around having strategic focus early on in your career. So thinking strategically early on in your career, because it affects all the subsequent stages of your career. It affects the trajectory that the rest of your career really will take. So on the first part, one of the quotes that has driven me as far as my career is concerned from the early days when I was in a junior role, and even at times where I felt I might not have been as appreciated as I thought I should have been, is around, I wouldn't call it a quote, it's a Bible verse which says, whatever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord and not to man. Many of us find ourselves in careers and roles where we put in the effort, we invest the time, but the recognition does not flow in a way that we feel is commensurate to the effort that we invested. Sometimes it doesn't even exist at all, never mind it being commensurate or consistent or similar to what you would feel you've put in, and that can put us off. But when you change the perspective, and for me, I was able to change it to say it's about God. I might not get the recognition. I might not even get the growth. In the early part of my career, I mean, I wasn't even getting promotions, but I always understood why I was doing what I was doing. Now, that bore results, or I find myself bearing results in that moment, even though they didn't translate into promotions early on, but they had an impact as far as the length and the subsequent portions of my career are concerned. So number 1 is possess a drive for excellence, an insatiable desire to win, understanding that your consistency as far as diligence is concerned, even though it might not be recognized, 1, it will drive you forward, it will help you to learn the things you need to learn, and it will advance you. But 2, even if that does not become something you see, even if the results do not materialize in the way you are hoping, it will glorify God. So that's number 1. Aristotle once said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but it is a habit. Many of us want to suddenly find ourselves in moments where we are excellent as far as our careers are concerned. You're that person who makes what the Forbes 30 under 30, Forbes 40 under 40, whatever these lists are, where, for one reason or another, someone is recognized, where you are recognized as at your organization or company's year-end functions, where you have become that young executive, you've become that impactful executive, whatever the case would be. But the thing is this, you don't just wake up on a random day and you are that individual. You grow into that person. As you do it repeatedly, that becomes part and parcel of who you are. And that is why it is important that in your drive towards excellence, you appreciate the importance of habits. Now, habits, they are positive habits, they're negative habits. You have to assess both. You want to keep building positive habits. You want to be a leader, but you've never been to a leadership summit. You don't read leadership books. Whatever the case is, ask yourself, am I embracing, adopting the right habits and living out the right habits that mean I am that person, that excellent individual that I aspire to be? Because the more you do it, as repeatedly as you do it, the more you become it. Similarly, there are habits that will hold you back. And those habits are habits you need to eliminate in your space. Habits around, not eating well, your diet, habits around any addictions, gambling, gaming, substance abuse, pornography, whatever it is, habits will consume the energy you need for your career and will not help you to advance. So that is on the first point, possessing a drive for excellence and that insatiable desire to win that drives you into a space where you are consistently investing diligently in your craft, at your workplace, moving the organization forward. Number 2, focus on learning how to solve problems. I look at this, many of us in the early stages of our careers, we just like, okay, look, I want to focus on this. I get a salary every month. There's a lot more that I can now do. And now even that starts hindering me from actually doing the right things, learning the right things at the right time, especially in the early parts of your career. And one of the things we miss is with the focus of just do your job, get the task done, we miss a crucial skill that becomes applicable not only in that stage of your life, but many years later. It's around how you solve and you and I solve problems. Someone once said, ultimately, you and I have problems that we want to solve. We want to solve big problems. And the bigger the problems you solve, the bigger the recognition you get. And someone once said that problems worthy of our attack prove their worth by fighting back. And that is an important consideration for you and I to understand. But in learning an ability to solve problem, that is a skill you will take with you to different situations and to different circumstances. You need to start understanding if I'm solving this problem, how do I involve the right people? How do I position the result and the outcome? How do I engage stakeholders? What are the factors that I consider? It is a way of thinking which applies despite the size of your role, the level at which you operate. And that is something you will take with you further on and along in your career. So it becomes important that you learn to understand and master the art of solving issues, solving problems, knowing how to solve a problem, even in fields that are foreign to you. It may not be, and I'm not speaking the depths of technical. Sometimes it's just knowing how to find the right people. And so that skill, which many people neglect, is a skill that goes beyond subject matter expertise, beyond disciplines. It's beyond your organization. It's beyond industries, and it's beyond geographies. It's an important skill that you must drive yourself to learn. Number 3, think strategically about your career. Think strategically about your career. Billie Jean once said, winning comes down to who can execute under pressure. You're going to get into moments of pressure, and I'm going to actually unpack that a lot more later. And then the second thing that I want to bring in about thinking strategically is what Michael Porter once said, who said, strategic thinking rarely occurs spontaneously. Strategic thinking rarely occurs spontaneously. You want to be deliberate about it. You want to be intentional around it. You want to set aside time to do it. Some of my friends used to, we used to joke about it. At the end of every year, I'll take 2-3 days out. I'll do a personal retreat. I'll book myself into a hotel, and people are like, you just book yourself into a retreat in a hotel. But what I do in those 3 days is impactful as far as my career is concerned and my wider life. But what I do is to think strategically about my career. One of the things that I thought about early on in my career was how much do I invest myself as far as the public speaking arena is concerned. I'm an actuary. I was going into an actuarial career path, and there are a lot more directly impactful skills in actuarial science on the technical front that I could have focused on. But I made a decision very early on that I'm going to position myself and grow myself to be strong from a communication standpoint, particularly verbally, but obviously also written. And I decided and foresaw, at least from my own career, that's something that will make me unique. It will distinguish me. And so if you think about that, it's the decision that I made 10 years ago when my career was starting. But if I were to explain to you the impact it has had in different stages of my career, it's profound. Yes, I have eventually qualified as an actuary. The journey, at some points, funny enough, there were even points that people were telling me that maybe you're doing too much speaking. And I spoke in different settings to different audiences, in churches, in top 4 banks, in international institutions. But I was deliberate about it. And sometimes it clashed with some of the things that were direct priorities. For example, the exam that I had to write from an actuarial standpoint. But what I decided is that I will grow both my actuarial career in parallel with my speaking abilities. And I believe that will position me differently. I'll give you examples now from a public speaking standpoint, if I were to go into an interview, which I did, in different settings a few years back, even for coming into my current organization, public speaking is not something I tell people that I do. I go into an interview and people tell me, we know you're a public speaker. And that already gives me a lot of credit. I'm a few steps ahead. The first thing that I did when I got to my current organization is they sent me to present to a board of a very large organization and train them on one of the things that we do. That was the first task that they gave me. But it's because they had seen what I do from a public speaking standpoint, the comfort I had in that area. And so it gave me an edge, it gave me an advantage. And that's a skill that is giving me an advantage in my actuarial career, which I invested in and thought about strategically many years earlier. I mentioned just a few moments ago that winning comes down to who can execute under pressure. That is a Billie Jean quote. And I'm now going to move into a focus on the key things from a top management or executive leadership and executive management standpoint. So the points I was speaking to now for me are wide-ranging and apply to particularly the junior to middle management stages of our careers. But when you get to top leadership, when you're thinking about executive leadership roles that you may be targeting, that you may be possessing, that you may be hoping for, there are certain skills that are absolutely critical for those. And they show up in certain settings. You need to be aware that they are being observed, noted, and will influence the next opportunity you have within your current organization, but also opportunities that you could get outside of whatever your current organization is. Number one, the ability to show up when the lights shine the brightest. I'm a sports fan. I have friends of mine. I literally have my busiest WhatsApp group has 3 people in it, and we are all actuaries, but we are not speaking anything actuarial science. We're speaking sports. We absolutely love sports. We can discuss any sport with names, whether it's martial arts, it's hockey, it is American football, it is the world's football. We can discuss it. But one of the things we focus on in there is what we call the clutch gene. The clutch gene is when the moment that makes or breaks your championship chances comes up. What do you do? There's 2 seconds left. You have that ball in your hands. If you make that basket, if it is basketball, there's one last kick in a football match. If you score that kick, your team wins the championship. Your team wins the World Cup. Think about how much pressure is on your shoulders in that moment. You have been working a whole year, a whole career for this moment. How do you show up? That's a critical skill and an attribute that is looked for in executives. Yes, most times you can get it right. Many people are consistent and it can get you to top executive roles. But really, those who will stand apart from the rest are those who will show up when the lights shine the brightest. So you get into those moments. You might ask yourself, but how would I show that? When do I get an opportunity to do that? It shows up so many times in your life. You just need to recognize it. It shows up when you're writing certain exams and you feel you might not be as prepared, but this is the moment. This is the time to write that exam. And your mental state in that moment determines whether you do it right or not. This is the time for you to present that paper, to present that presentation. You wanted to have 1 extra day, 1 extra hour, 1 extra minute, but this is it. What do you do in that moment? That is a critical attribute. The second attribute is showing up when circumstances are not conducive. The reality is we will find ourselves challenged. Things will not always go well. But what do you do when things don't go well? How do you conduct yourself when things are challenged, when things are not conducive? Many people crumble under that pressure. Can you, even though you had prepared, someone drops the ball, a presentation is lost, you had done all that you needed to do, can you lift yourself up and still deliver and still have a calm mind, a calm state to deliver? Third and last, and maybe a quote there, Kobe once said, everything negative, whether it's pressure, it's challenges, is all an opportunity for me to rise. And that's what you'll encounter. The third thing, some might call it networking, some might call it whatever, but it's around relationships, your ability to influence relationships. stakeholders. That's what you're going to really be about in top leadership. The stakeholders might be fellow executives. The stakeholders might be another company, might be, people in our supply chain, whatever it is. There is an importance to consider that. I'm going to close with 3 points that are overarching because this is now exactly 20 minutes. The 3 overarching considerations is that as far as your career is concerned, know your worth. One person once said, know your worth and then add text. There are some times that you need to realize that, look, in this organization, my time has come to an end. I don't have any more potential to grow. I've done what I needed to do, and then I need to look for greener pastures. There are those moments, and if you don't do it at some point in time, it unfortunately hinders your overall growth. Number 2, how you do it matters. It's not all about you. So don't cut throats. Don't step on people to rise. Someone once said, nice guys may appear to finish last, but usually they're the ones that are running a different race. Lastly, know God, the God factor. This is an entire talk on its own. And for me, it is the most important thing. Make it all about God, because I'm a Christian and I'll speak to you. I don't know where you are in your belief system, but for me, it's all about God. It's about glorifying Him. And that becomes a guiding, a way in which I'm guided to know, what do I do? How do I react? What do I say? How do I say it? And it informs a lot that I do around my career, how I do it, how I manage my finances, how I engage people, who I mentor, how I mentor them, how I rise. Do I do something unethical or not? So I'm going to close it there and hand over back to Dr. Power and Pastor Power.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thaba. Wow, that was a mouthful. Like we promised, we will resist the temptation to comment and hand over to Dr. Sekgoka. Over to you, sir.
Okay, greetings to the Phago family, my friend Joe. I'll call you my friend Joe for now. It's easier for me that way. And Pastor Phago. And thanks, Katlego, for the inspiring talk. I'm motivated. I've been listening all the way. And there's definitely a lot of takeaways for me. So I'll approach it a bit differently, in the sense that I'm just really going to share my life story and just touch on the main points that I think will be beneficial for all. So I'm currently working as the executive for data science at Telkom, and I'm an adjunct professor at the UNISA Graduate School of Leadership. So it's 2 roles that I'm holding currently. And as an executive, I believe we all know it's a challenging assignment, I must say, because whilst I'm looking after business delivery, I'm also responsible for the people under my care. So I've got a team that I'm leading, and I've got other teams that I'm collaborating with as well. So which is, I think it's a privilege to be in the position that I'm in. So how I got here, I'll just briefly explain. But background-wise, I was born in Gaskororo ke Moshate, Skororo in Limpopo. The other side here, Yazanin towards Leidenburg. So I did my matric there, went on to do my BSc mathematics, statistics, and computer science with Joe. We were classmates in computer science at some point. And then at that time, whilst I was just about to complete, the university hired an Indian man from India, Professor Yadavali, who came on to lead the statistics department. And he realized that I had the talent for mathematics, so he really redirected my focus to mathematics, which really paid off for me. So I got my mentor at that time, whilst I was an undergraduate student. So he started mentoring me, and upon completing my honors, I was offered a scholarship to study abroad. I did engineering mathematics masters at the University of Twente in the Netherlands. And then I came back, worked as a survey statistician for Statistics South Africa. That was really my first junior position that I got. Yeah, and I reunited with my mentor on my return. So at some point, I convinced myself to register for a PhD. And once again, he was at the helm. He supervised my work all the way through to completion. So my career was mostly spent in the banking sector. So I worked for most of the commercial banks, from middle manager to senior management. And I think the last time I worked for a bank was at Nedbank. I was in a senior management position as a technical product owner. I ran a very large team there responsible for digitizing business rules. And then until I got to Telkom. So yeah, I hold a PhD in industrial systems. So it's advanced mathematics, technically, it's graduate mathematics. So my thesis used a lot of mathematical graph theory, a subject that I'm very passionate about. It's just a bit different from calculus because it's combinatorics. It's a very, very interesting subject. So how did I get to all this? How did I move up? There's been a lot of learnings for me, which I think most of you can learn from as well. So when I worked as an executive at African Bank back in 2010, so from 2010 to 2014, I was at African Bank. In 2012, I was promoted to executive management. The bank hired coaches for us, someone to give us coaching, like what do you do with your team? How do you relate to your fellow execs? How do you live your life? How do you structure yourself? Those type of things. That for me was a huge turning point. It was a big turning point for me because a gentleman by the name of Bronson was hired as my coach by the bank. And I forged a strong relationship with him. Even after leaving the bank, he still remained my career coach. So even today, as I'm speaking, I've got a career coach in Bronson. He's a qualified industrial psychologist. So the most important principles that I've learned, I'm just going to share with all of you now. Number one is time management. Time management is so important. It's extremely important. And those who do it well know that you have to have your goals on a paper, somewhere listed on a paper. You must say, I want to achieve A, B, C, D. So I didn't just, qualify with a PhD. No, it was part of my goals. It was on my list of goals. And it was one of those goals which were prioritized and moved up because it was necessary for me to accomplish that goal. So on your list of goals, you have those items that are going to change your life. You have them on the list, and once you've got them there, you do something each day which will help you to get there. So Katlego touched on this, and then I think it's just so important. It goes, in fact, let me just take it from Proverbs 4. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, be careful how you think. Your life is shaped by your thoughts. So it's technically what you put in your mind. Remember, what you put in your mind is your desires. Your mind doesn't just start to think whatever it's thinking now. It's driven by what is coming from your heart. What you desire so much will manifest in your thoughts. And once they manifest in your thoughts, your actions or your speech will follow from those thoughts. So whatever you do, it was inspired by a thought, and that thought was inspired by desire. So be careful what you think, because that is what governs your life. So absolutely critical. So whatever you think about, make sure that you are able to manage that. So don't just think through things like when Katlego spoke about addictions and so forth. Those are the things that we entertain in our minds. if you don't have room for thinking alcohol, there's no way you can think alcohol. What is it that you are thinking that is putting on the straight path? It's probably the word of God. Is it your career? It should be something, or it's something else. Whatever it is that is driving your thoughts is something that you have to really take full control of. So it starts there. It starts with what you think. It starts with yourself setting objectives to say, I want to achieve A, B, C, D. I want to be a top expert in this area. And it's really up to you. You will definitely make it. I strongly believe that it all starts with your mind, and it's effective time management, meaning that you must have the discipline to be able to carry out whatever you feel that you need to carry out. So it's the listing of your goals, prioritizing them, doing something each day so that you can end up achieving your goals. And I think you will certainly be unstoppable, because look, career-wise, we focus more on our own personal growth than anything else. If you are sitting in a business that is not going to serve your needs, when you are developing yourself well, you can easily just say goodbye. Someone will actually just come and get hold of you. Someone who's going to align with your vision, with your principles, with whatever you want to achieve you'll be able to meet them. You can't miss an opportunity if you are ready all the time. So it's all in your hands. It's yours. The world is yours to conquer, really. So there is this book called The Time Trap, which I really recommend for everyone. When you consider time management, the book called The Time Trap by Alec McKenzie is very, very much beneficial. It's something that you can read and really work on getting yourself to be as effective as possible. So what does it take to achieve one's goals? It takes discipline. It takes the right effort. It takes hard work, and it takes focus. And I've just listed those very important ingredients that you need for achieving your objectives, your goals, your aspirations. But the most important one is discipline. So what discipline stipulates is that you must be able to do things that need to be done without having to put excuses. So I'll give you an example. When I studied for my PhD, I completed it in 2021 February. So most of the last bits of work in my PhD was done during COVID, during level 5 lockdown. So lockdown was never a distraction for me. I still had to find ways to make sure that I study. I work twice as hard as it was necessary. So meaning there should be no room for excuses. That is what it means when we talk discipline. No room for excuses. You do what needs to be done. You can't wake up tomorrow and say, today I'm feeling tired, I'm not going to learn. No, it's not acceptable. You've got to have that determination to wake up. I remember there was a time when I had to start work at 4 in the morning, sort of every single day, for me to get through some of the research papers that I had to have published. And I had to do it. It didn't mean that I felt good about doing it or I wanted to do it. No, I had to do what was needed to be done. And that is exactly what discipline is all about. And in most instances, if we can find that discipline, I think Katlego spoke about it, you can avoid a lot of trouble, a lot of things that are not necessary, that constitute addictions, that constitute things like poor eating habits. It really takes discipline to overcome poor eating habits and living healthy. People who go to the gym have the discipline. People who keep in shape have that discipline and the drive. most of the people who have reached the sort of the echelons, the highest levels of their careers have the discipline. So it's either you have it or you don't. And if you don't, really, you are just kissing goodbye to your dreams and aspirations. And if you do that, then there is really no point in living, because you have to enjoy your life. So that is the most important one that I can think of, the discipline. So in terms of working as a leader, I want to touch on this because it's very important. I think whenever you have people under your care, and I mean, this speaks across all disciplines, whether it be whatever office that you hold, it can be in church, it can be at work, it can be in the community. This is the most important one for me. You have to take care of the people that are under you. Never take people for granted. It's so important. Just never take people for granted, because the minute you are in leadership, you must know you have an opportunity to inspire somebody. Most of us were inspired by our leaders. Take care of the people that you are in charge of. Motivate them, give them the support that they need. You know, it's very hard sometimes, because I mean, I'm sitting in that position. Sometimes some of the people that I'm mentoring myself, I get let down by them, but at least I know in my past, in my career, I've been let down by the people who were supposed to lead. And I don't think it's a good idea. If you are in a leadership position, just never let the people down. And if you can uphold that principle, trust me, South Africa is going to be a much, 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 much better place, because there would be no stealing. You know, we wouldn't be having some of these load sheddings that we are having. We wouldn't be having our infrastructures crumbling like it is. We'll be having proper health by simply having the right people in charge. So if you are in charge, ask yourself if you are the right person or not. And if you are not, please work hard at, becoming the right person. Yeah. Okay, so I will close there, and then I think questions will then clarify some of the things that may not be clear at the moment. So thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Brapet. Truly appreciate it. Yeah, listening to you, my friends, is like we have not given you enough time to talk.
Yeah,
there's just a lot that needs to be said. But we are opening up for questions. So people, you may feel free to raise your hand if you want to comment or to ask any question. You can even type on the chat whatever question you have. From our side, we also are having many questions that we want to ask. The first one is, you mentioned leaving organizations. I look at both of you. You have not worked for one organization all your life. Some of you have even changed sectors, etc. So how do you know is the right time to leave this organization? Yeah, so maybe let's do that, and then we'll come to other questions. Dr. Thaba?
Thank you, Dr. Yeah, so firstly, thank you, Professor. Really appreciate that, Professor. It's it was quite insightful, and especially in the emphasis on the power of discipline, which you emphasized on. I think that's profound, and I think some questions might lead to that, and then you'll unpack for us even further. In terms of when to leave organizations, it is a very interesting one. I think there are certain things that need to be in place always on your part. You always have to do your part, but you need to know where you're going, right? You need to know where you're going, and having done your part, knowing where you're going, ask yourself the question: the place that I'm in, Is it helping me to go there? And now, if you don't know where you are going, somebody said every road will lead you there. And that's the problem. But when you know where you're going, and the issue is that some of us, where you're going can't just be financial. Financial remuneration considerations can be part of it, but it can't be everything. Otherwise, you'll just keep moving and keep moving and keep moving. So in my case, there were two key factors when I've made my first move. One was I felt the space that I was in, the environment that I was in, wasn't sufficiently technical from an actuarial standpoint, and I wanted to get the right exposure early on in my career. In that phase of my career, I was doing a lot of technical marketing type work, and it wasn't inherently deeply actuarial. And the issue is that as you grow in your career, you move away from the technical bits. I didn't want to get myself in a situation where I'm now in management roles, but I never really did the key technical bits. So that was one consideration that meant I need to move. Secondly, the environment. I found that where I was at the time, I was in the Western Cape. The environment that I was in did not afford me and exposed me to the right levels of opportunity. And I engaged it from different angles. I could see I was delivering. I could see I want a new challenge. And I realized I'm not going to get it there. There are certain conversations that I had about my progression. I mean, when you're delivering, you're getting recognition, you're getting the right awards, etc., but you're not progressing. That was, for me, already a hint that, you know what, you need to consider where else you will be best using your skills and at the right level. And that's what informed me, and partly also around where I chose to go next. So maybe I'll pause it there. I don't know if Dr. Phago, you want to also pass it on to Professor.
Yes, so on my side, I think, in fact, that's a very important story to share. My departure from organizations was mostly driven by a career change. When I worked in the banking sector, I worked for Standard Bank as a quantitative analyst responsible for credit modeling. And then I got exposed to market risk within Standard Bank. And then I decided, you know what, I need to know both sides of the risk. So both market risk and credit risk. And then an opportunity arose at FNB. Then I moved over to FNB. So that was my first move. And then one important move that I want to share about is, it was in 2014 when I was working for African Bank. It was just before the demise of the bank at that time. So I was part of the executive management team, and we took decisions. So the bank was really in trouble, and I was at the helm at that time. And we took decisions that I disagreed with as an executive manager. And I felt that I was morally compromised by the type of the decisions that, because I could not support them, and I was just overruled. You know, when you are overruled, you must go with everyone else. You can't say, no, I didn't agree. No, it doesn't work that way. You must all agree to do something which you know for sure is not right. And that, I think, it's compromising a lot. There was a time I remember when I lost sleep at night, and I realized, you know what, I can't recover here. I'm not sleeping because I'm seeing pensioners' funds that are going to get lost, and these people will never be able to work again. And if I make this type of decisions, I'm compromising them. Rather, let me stand my ground or leave the organization. So I had to leave without a job, without a salary. So I compromised my family for that. But I stood for something so, for something so critical, so important, that it had to affect me for the rest of my life. So I knew I compromised my family a bit, but I had to leave. So I left. I was without a job for a much longer time. I thought I was highly qualified. It wouldn't take me long before I could get a job. But unfortunately, it took me much, much longer than I had anticipated. But never for once did I regret my decision to leave. So that sometimes you just have to really value your own principles and decide, can I be part of this? If you end up becoming part of a very, very corrupt organization and you decide just for the sake of salary, I'm going to stick it out, then I'm not one of those. But then the most important reason for leaving for me has been a career change, as I said. So I am where I am now because I've developed myself in this area. So for IR, the fourth industrial revolution is where everything is happening. So I've been developing myself to operate in this space and to be recognized as one of the top voices in machine learning throughout the world. And I've achieved that. So I'm running artificial intelligence through the ML platform, which is machine learning. I'm driving my career in that space, and it's a space that I really love, and I worked so hard to get myself into this space. So it was just a matter of time before an opportunity arose for me to get in. So I moved because that opportunity arose at Telkom, and then I had to move over to Telkom. So it was not because I was applying for jobs. No, I knew exactly what I was working toward, and when it came about, I knew exactly what to do. And fortunately, I'm where I am now. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's very inspirational, very helpful. So we have two questions. I can tell that you are both principled people, and you do value the role that God plays in your life. I mean, Mr. Thaba was saying that is the most important thing. So we would give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about that. But starting with you, Brapet, the issue of, you mentioned mentors and coaches. You mentioned that, be the leader that you need to be, mentor other people underneath you, have a coach for your career, etc. So how would you advise somebody to go about that? How can we practically look into that? Do you think it's something that is practically, how can you assist us to do that, and the importance of that? And thereafter we'll get Mr. Thaba to also talk about that. And hold the thought, just the last question also, as you can see on the group chat, actually not the group chat, but as the host, you can see that. So when you have an opportunity, also please look at that question in the chat and maybe feel free to answer that. Brapet.
Yeah, thanks. Let me start with the question on the chat. Yeah. So yeah, at the time when I was unemployed, my CV was in the hands of a recruitment agency. I just want to share this because it's very important. So my CV was taken to Standard Bank by the agency, the recruitment agency, and HR at Standard Bank guaranteed the agent that there is no way that Patrick cannot get employment at Standard Bank because he is highly qualified. He once received the CEO award here at Standard Bank years back, and he is highly experienced as well. So I was taken through to teams, to several heads of divisions, and none of them, I think I was going through 2 or 3 interviews per week for like 2 months. None of them was willing to hire me. And the problem I found, I only got to find out later, was that at a senior management level, the heads of divisions don't want to hire somebody who can come and compete with them for the same position. Sometimes when they see you as a threat, they make sure that they reject you. So most interviews that we fail, you might be failing interviews thinking that you are not good enough. No, only to find that it's actually the opposite. You are just way too good for the people that are interviewing you. And they decide, you know what, if we bring this one in here, we are not going to feel important. That is the thing. So by the grace of God, I had sufficient savings. So those savings took me through, I mean, me and the family through, and my wife is employed as well. So that helped a lot. So it was the family structure that really got me going. And I always say to people that I've got brothers and sisters who knew exactly the situation that I was in. One of my brothers took over my car repayments, and he said, until you find yourself a job, I'll be paying this car. And that's exactly how I was helped out. So the family structure really played the most critical role. I didn't have any car repossessed. No, the house was never repossessed. School fees were paid. I managed through savings, and I was helped by the family, you know. And even though some of my sisters had to borrow me some money for me to return later when I'm good, but yeah, so it had to be that way. So I was helped out very much so, because it was an extended period of time. And I think worst of all, I got a job that paid much less than what I earned when I returned to work. And I had to be in that job for 4 years at least. And beyond the 4 years, when I got the new job, it paid back. I think it closed the gap like there was never a gap before. You know, things just returned to normal in a way that it was miraculous. It was God's work, you know. But at least I took the punishment for deciding not to compromise people. But at the end of the day, it paid off, because my conscience is still clean, and it will be forever clean. And I would never, I've told myself I would never compromise the community or the people. In whatever position that I'll be in, I'll make sure that I understand, because leadership is all about that. Leadership is not about becoming rich. It's not about driving fancy cars. It's about being in charge of the people that you are leading. So we are where we are as the country, compromised by the architects of apartheid, because those people were educated enough to draft policy that will look after their own people. So if I get an opportunity to draft policy, I'll draft policy that will look after people, not compromise them, not to enrich myself or to enrich my family. No, it's supposed to be the people. Yeah. So that I think should answer the question on the chat. And what was the other question, Joe?
Oh, okay. So there's the question of mentorship and coaching.
Yes. So as we speak now, I'm busy coaching and mentoring one of my senior managers for my position. I want him to be ready. In fact, we started this journey last year. Within a year or two, he will be ready. So I'm giving him that exposure. Some of the presentations that I'm supposed to do that's my responsibility to do to the executive management, I give to him, because I know you have to learn the boardroom tactics. You must understand when to speak, when not to speak, and how to speak as well in the boardroom. It makes a huge difference. So unless people get that exposure, they will, they won't get it right. So, and with some of the highly technical stuff that I've got, I do get disappointed here and there, because some of them leave. You mentor them so well that they feel they are ready to leave, even though you still feel that they might still need some little bit of time. So I think mentoring is absolutely critical. You can initiate it yourself. If you identify talent, you spot a talent, you must just hop on it. Don't waste time. You see this person is talented, get them to understand exactly what you are seeing in them. That is for me what Professor Yadavali did. He said, Patrick, this is what I think you need to pursue, because I can see this is your talent. And when I see something similar in the people that I'm working with, I always make sure that I immediately make it very clear and see how best I can afford, how best I can help shape that career. And it just works wonders because it brings with it the motivation, it brings with it the confidence, it brings with it that self-assurance, because when somebody knows that they are good and you are prepared to make them even better so that they can be the best, it just helps. It's a responsibility for everyone at a role that is much more senior. You don't have to be an executive to start mentoring. I'm getting a lot of requests for mentorship on LinkedIn, and I straight away hop into them because people say, I've seen your profile. I really love how you did it. Can you be my mentor? Then I say, yes, for sure. So it's something that I think everybody needs to do because you'll be lifting up the people around you. You will be empowering. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thaba.
Thank you. So I'll maybe do the other side of mentorship, given that Professor Sekgoka has already addressed the one side where he is the mentor. So I'll speak to what mentorship has done for me. So I've mentored people, but I've also been mentored on my journey or in my journey. So I'll focus on that. So I had, I guess, in one way, the privileged opportunity, on the other, a big challenge of becoming an executive for an insurance company when I was 26 years of age. We were writing about 800 plus million rands of business at the time. And I had no experience in this role, in this space. And the privilege I had at that time was that I had a good mentor. Now, this person had been an executive at, 2 of the big 5 insurance companies in South Africa. And there's a lot that I gained because there were so many situations that I found myself in where either I was quite unsure of what I was thinking, and it could be a sounding board for me and reiterate approaches, especially when you start getting into executive roles, you're going against other executives, and there's a lot of politicking that you need to start appreciating. So for me, it was critical from that standpoint. Secondly, it was also critical in terms of looking ahead about my career and around my career in terms of what should be the next role. I can engage him and bounce ideas around when I was in this role, what I was doing there, what does it take and what should be the appropriate role. There were some roles that, I had been given offers to, and I wasn't very convinced, and I would engage him around it, and he will also speak to it and say, look, he doesn't believe this is a role for me. So there's certain things that are quite pivotal in that regard. And ultimately, I ended up in the current organization, and I've grown well, and that's part of a decision also he was assisting me with and connected me with the right people. So when I got into this organization, he had already spoken to very senior people in this organization that I'm going in there. So I get there and I get senior partners in our firm saying, oh, your mentor told me you're coming. I mean, just imagine the value of that, right? Powerful. And then thirdly, that I just also wanted to highlight is one of the things you endure, especially in executive roles, is that you can overemphasize how big the problems are. So he helped give me perspective. And one of the things he said to me was, you know what, Katlego, the things that you make mistakes on now that frustrate you now, you look back on them in 10 years' time and think, that was such a small issue. Why was I even bothered by that? It just completely transformed my perspective. So maybe let me touch on your other question around the God factor, which for me was critical and is critical in my career. I didn't delve into a lot of detail on that, but maybe in some 2 quick brief points I'll highlight it. So when the Bible speaks about in all your ways, acknowledge God and he will direct your paths. Now, many of us sometimes can be frustrated and say, why didn't I get this promotion? Why didn't I get this role? But when you will look back, if you are acknowledging God on your journey, you'll actually be thankful about things that previously were frustrations in the moment. Because whatever happens, even in cases where you feel someone was holding on to your promotion, blocking your advancement, but if you have God on your side and you're acknowledging him across in your journey, he will direct your paths. And for me, that has always been critical. Some of the decisions that I made where I knew God was with me. When I moved and made my first career move, people were questioning me, why are you going into such an organization? It's a small organization. There are a lot of reputational issues in the marketplace, etc. But I had the confidence that I have God on my side. One of the ways in which we acknowledge God, simple thing as believers, God gives a clear instruction, for example, bring into the house of the Lord, into the storehouse of the house of the Lord, whatever it is that you earn, first fruits, tithes. So for me, one of the things decisions I made very early on is I'll give to God what is God's. Everything, in fact, is God's, but He has only asked for a portion of what I bring in as income. And that has given me the confidence that whatever challenge I face professionally, I'm like, God, you know how faithful I have been. And that's how I go to God. I mean, I've worked for 10 years. There's no 1 month where I've missed tithes in all my 10 years of working. And I decided, I said, God, as tough as it is, especially in the early days of my career, I'll tithe on gross. I'm not saying you must tithe on gross. I just want gross blessings. It's just me and my God, right? And the truth is, when I look at my career, the favor that has come with it, there are certain things that my skill, abilities, and even networks had no role in as far as my growth career-wise is concerned. There are things that just God opened certain doors, and I am now in a very senior role, and there's some of the moves that I was like, I had nothing to do with it. So for me, the God factor has been absolutely critical.
Wow, thank you so much. One other thing that really strikes me is that how related your stories are and how related your principles are. For example, you have mentioned the issue of relationship, networking, etc., and the issue of handling failure or rejection. And Thaba and Brapet went into great details about that. Some of the challenges that he faced after he resigned from the careers, etc. So it's just quite interesting that you'd say this and the other person comes with practical tips and things like that. So it seems as if some of the principles that you are giving us are so related, as if you are brothers. So yeah, but I just want to as I open up for people to be able to unmute themselves and to participate and to talk. What you just said previously, you mentioned that just now. You said there's the God factor, which trumps other things that enables you to succeed in life. I mean, for example, you mentioned the networking or the relationships can help you in terms of going ahead in life. You mentioned the skills and abilities and going for excellence. So really, you mentioned some of the principles that you just introduced to us. So I'm not sure if you may also perhaps want to go into more details around that, just to say that we're having my son here is at varsity. So he's saying that some of the things that he's studying are a little bit too theoretical, and he wonders, if there is any point in some of the things that he's doing, if they're relevant at all, for the career, etc. So, I mean, how would you then advise somebody like that, or somebody who feels that, I'm at the end of my career. I mean, I've been at this job. I'm not seeing a way out. Young people like Katlego, they're already executives at 26. I'm like 46. I don't see how I can even reach that stage. I want to be an executive. I don't even know how to get to that stage. So what sort of advices can you give to us who are just starting in our careers, and those who, by other people's calculations, are almost at the end, but they have not quite cracked it yet?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question, Dr. Power. It's a very good question, and it's around what inspires you, what drives you, what motivates you, and what we believe drives us. I think Professor mentioned early on around goals. It's about, at any point in our lives, we can have a vision. And oftentimes, and for us who are believers, God also inspires our visions. There is certain impact you can have at 50 that somebody who's 20 can never have. There are people who can be inspired by what you do. I watch online and on social media stories of a mother who is 50 and 55 getting a matric. That's unbelievable. I mean, imagine what that says to that young person who's now 30 and feels like they don't need to go back and do their matric. So I believe that wherever you are, you can come up with meaningful goals that are challenging for you. It is not a competition. I don't compare myself with anybody. I look at where I am, what God has gifted me with, and say, this is what I'm going to pursue. It may be around the impact it will have on your family, the impact it will have in your community. As a young person, the world is your oyster. There are so many things you can have an impact on. But what are you passionate about? And how can you come up with a vision that links your passion with what you're studying, your field of study, to say, how do I advance towards that? Because the moment you sit down and come up with your personal vision of where you want to go, it starts having value. You start chasing it. When I started in my current employer in 2019, I was a manager, and I had the privilege there. One of my mentors was a very senior person in the executive. And I had a goal there that said that in 5 years' time, I have to be an associate director. And it was a goal. And when I engaged with him, I was like, okay, that's a bit ambitious, right? And the reason I had it there is because I know it will inform how I conduct myself, how I push into things, how I learn, and even how I connect with the right people towards that goal. I was able to get to that goal, as ambitious as it was. And so putting down that goal, Professor Sekgoka mentioned that writing it down starts giving you the drive, the motivation to say, are you doing things that get you towards it? Many of us lack the motivation, lack the inspiration, lack the drive. But when we ask ourselves the questions, we find we don't have anything written down. So I will leave it at that,
Thank you so much. I think we are almost at the end of our contracted time. I haven't seen too much participation from our guests, but that's okay. So Ntate Sekgoka, I'm not sure, Prof, if you would like to maybe take a bite at that at the same time, as you are wrapping up, maybe tying up any other loose ends that might be there.
Yes, so yeah, I'll just share a video. It's a few 25 seconds video, so by one of the tennis stars that we all know. She's probably retired now, by the name of Venus Williams. Let me just share it. Okay. Is it appearing on the screen?
We can see that you're sharing, but we are not seeing what you are sharing.
Okay, let me see. I normally use things, so.
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, great. Let me just play it.
Sorry, is there supposed to be a sound from the video?
Yes.
I can't hear anything. Not sure.
We're not getting. Are we
Yeah,
not getting?
we can hear the sound. I'm not sure if you're having an extra mic that you have plugged in. Maybe the computer thinks it's a speaker.
No, there's no extra mic. I wonder what.
I suspect, Professor, you might need to stop sharing. And when you reshare, at the top right of your screen, there'll be an option to share with sound. So maybe just stop sharing and then reshare. At the top of the screen, it typically would have include or share with computer sound. after you stop sharing and you try to reshare.
Okay, let me see.
Okay, and then as you share, there will be like an option to say share with sound at the top right of your screen.
Share with sound.
Yeah, just before you click share. So as you click on the share button on Zoom, and then before you say start sharing, on the top right where it chooses the screens, there's a include computer sound. Yeah, so just click the share once, the share button.
Yeah.
And then as it comes up there, give you the options. There will be normally a share with computer sound at the bottom left, sorry, at the bottom left of the screen.
Oh, yes. There we go. I've got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. So I'll play it now. Let me know if the sound is coming through.
I honestly believe discipline is freedom.
I want to hear about that.
When you have discipline, you get what you want. When you don't have discipline, you do not get any of what you want. So you're free to live your dream, you're free to do the things that you love, and then you start to come to love the discipline. And then when you don't have the discipline, that's when the anxiety sets in because you know you're not paying the price. And if you don't pay the price, you get nothing. So you got to pay the price, and then you have to have discipline, and then the world is open to you.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to share.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much. Wow, what a beautiful, inspirational wrap up. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not sure as Muruti will help close for us.
I don't know if there's any questions in the group or we should close.
Yeah,
we were hoping to have a lot of interaction. So I'm hoping that, next time, guys, you'll be free to talk. We get more when we ask questions, and due to time, we're gonna close. But we'll just allow one hand if there's any before we close our session for tonight.
Yeah, you may unmute and talk, or you may type a question in there. But yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything. So we haven't given you the data have an opportunity to close, to wrap up, and any last words, and then we will then close with the word of prayer.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate the time, and I think I'm learning a lot listening to Professor here, and it's about ultimately what you apply. So the reality is that you can hear many things, some are sounding great and inspirational, but what really counts is what do you put into practice? And if you build habits that help you to put the right things into practice, that's where you are going to see the right results. So my encouragement is that where you are, whatever it is from a career standpoint that you're trying to build, be intentional about it, commit to putting things down in writing and actually put things into motion, start doing things. And as you get to do things, as you do the right things, all of it starts coming together. Have the vision so it inspires you, but it's not for it to scare you that you don't even do anything. Just do the small little steps that get you towards it. So that's how I would bring it all together on my end. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So in terms of the announcements, thank you so much, family, for coming through. We appreciate all that. So this was live streamed on YouTube. So you can always go back and check it out and pause, rewind, whatever, take notes. It's available perpetually there for all of us. So from our side, we will be having the weekend away from the 1st to the 3rd of December, which will be from Friday to Sunday. Leaving in a bus here in Centurion early in the morning, maybe 9 o'clock or so, and coming back on Sunday afternoon. We still have very limited spaces left. If you want to join us, please contact us so that you can be on that. It won't be about careers or anything. It will just be about marriage and family related matters.
Yes, I would also want to appreciate Prof and Mr. Thaba for your time, and the whole family for coming and being part of our session tonight. May the Lord bless you, and may He keep you, and may His face shine upon you. We believe that whatever you have shared with us here tonight will continue on YouTube and our media platform to empower more people and to just give direction in terms of our careers. And thank you so much. The Lord bless you. I'm just going to pray shortly and then